Aryna Sabalenka reveals what it was like to play on reduced court against ATP player. Aryna Sabalenka admitted it felt different to play on a reduced-size court and also noted that playing against a man was a completely different tennis. The organizers of the latest Battle of the Sexes version decided to do something differently, so they made the Belarusian's side of the court 9% smaller in both width and length. The move was made to benefit Sabalenka, but it also looked a bit awkward at times. For example, when Sabalenka was serving, she would stand a few feet behind her baseline so she could serve from where she usually does. It wasn't easy for Kyrgios either, whose margin for error was lesser than usually. Also, it is worth mentioning that each player only had one serve. In the end, Sabalenka managed to break Kyrgios 3 times, but also lost her serve 5 times, as the Australian sealed a 6-3 6-3 win. Sabalenka. The court felt different as well as playing against a guy. Of course it felt different. The court is different. I had to do a couple adjustments. Obviously playing against a guy is completely different tennis. Everything much faster. It was a great fitness for me today. I hope for the next couple days I'll have great recovery and great days off. After this match, I'm pretty much ready for the season. I hope I'll bring great tennis and bring joy to the people watching me during the season, the reigning US Open champion explained. After concluding her highly anticipated match against Kyrgios, Sabalenka will hop on a plane and fly to Australia. The Belarusian tennis star is scheduled to kick off her season at the Brisbane International for the 3rd consecutive year. In Brisbane, the world #1 finished as runner-up in 2024 before collecting the title in the 2025 tournament edition. Sabalenka could face some pretty strong names in the very first week of 2026 as Elena Rybakina, Amanda Anisimova, Jessica Pegula and Mira Andreeva are also set to play. Aryna Sabalenka stood at the baseline, racket resting against her shoulder, eyes tracing the chalk that no longer felt like home. The lines had been pulled inward, the alleys tightened, the margins reduced just enough to change everything. It was still tennis, but not the tennis she knew. Across the net stood an ATP player, taller, heavier-framed, relaxed in a way that comes from years of trading blows at speeds that punish hesitation. This wasn't about proving superiority or settling tired arguments about men versus women in tennis. This was an experiment, one that asked a simple question: what happens when the court itself shifts the balance? Sabalenka bounced on her toes, breathing deeply. She had played on the biggest stages in the world, under floodlights and Grand Slam pressure, but this felt different. Smaller. More exposed. When the court shrinks, she would later say, your time disappears. The first rally. The opening rally answered every doubt immediately. The serve came fast, not overwhelming but precise. On a full-sized court, Sabalenka would have had an extra half-step, a familiar rhythm. Here, the ball was on her before her instincts could settle. She returned deep, powerful as always, but the response came back even faster. The reduced court compressed the exchange, turning every rally into a reflex test. There was no room to reset, no wide angles to stretch points into endurance battles. It felt like playing inside a box where power echoed louder and mistakes bounced back harder. Sabalenka adjusted quickly. She always did. Her feet moved earlier, her swing shortened, her eyes sharpened. The raw force that defined her game didn't disappear, but it evolved. Power became efficiency. Aggression became timing. This court doesn't forgive, she laughed afterward. You either adapt or you chase the ball all day. Power meets geometry. Sabalenka is known for her thunderous ground strokes, shots that push opponents meters behind the baseline. But on a reduced court, depth became dangerous. Balls that would normally dip inside the line now flirted with errors. The court demanded restraint, not fearlessness. What surprised her most wasn't the speed, it was the angles. The ATP player exploited the shortened width, redirecting pace with subtle flicks of the wrist. There was less space to defend, fewer escape routes. Sabalenka felt like the court was constantly asking her a question she had to answer immediately. Flat or spin? Attack or absorb? There's no autopilot, she said. Every shot has to be intentional. Yet when she found her rhythm, the court rewarded her. Her returns landed heavier. Her serves felt even more dominant. With less ground to cover, her athleticism shone, turning defense into offense in a single step. Mental pressure in tight spaces. The physical challenge was obvious, but the mental one lingered longer. On a standard court, Sabalenka knows how to reset after an error. She walks to the back fence, adjusts her strings, breathes. On the reduced court, the space itself seemed to stare back at her, reminding her that there was nowhere to hide. Psychologically, it's intense, she admitted. You feel closer to everything. The net, the opponent, the mistake you just made. The ATP player noticed it too. The rallies were shorter, sharper. Momentum shifted faster. One misjudged swing could swing a game. And yet, Sabalenka thrived in that pressure. The smaller court amplified her competitive fire. Each point felt like a challenge thrown directly at her identity as a power player. Instead of backing off, she leaned in, redefining the debate. The match, if it could be called that, wasn't about the score. It was about understanding. Sabalenka didn't walk away thinking the reduced court made things fair or unfair. Instead, she saw it as a different language of tennis altogether. It's not about men or women, she said thoughtfully. It's about space. Space changes everything. The experiment highlighted something often overlooked. Tennis is not just about strength or speed, but geometry, timing, and adaptation. Change the dimensions, and you change the sport's DNA. For Sabalenka, the experience was humbling but empowering. She didn't feel diminished by the challenge, she felt sharpened by it. I learned a lot about my game, she admitted. About control. About patience. About how fast I can really think. Walking off the court. When the session ended, Sabalenka walked off the reduced court and onto a standard one nearby. The space felt enormous, almost luxurious. The baseline stretched wider, the alleys breathed again. She smiled. Now this feels like freedom, she said. But she carried something back with her. A heightened awareness, a reminder that even at the top of the sport, new perspectives can emerge from the simplest changes. A few lines moved inward. A few assumptions moved outward. And for Aryna Sabalenka, the game became bigger by becoming smaller.